Thank you for tuning in today. How to Become an Obstacle Buster podcast is helping sales professionals and entrepreneurs to overcome their obstacles by providing strategies, tips, and insights in achieving success. I'm Warren Wandling, and on this show, I'll take you behind the scenes to get to know a variety of leaders and keys to their success. If you're ready for a breakthrough, download my free book, Be a Lead Magnet, How to Create Leads and Attract Clients, a personal coaching guide. Go to warrenwandling.com. Now, on to the show. Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I am your host, Warren Wandling. If this is your first time listening or you've been part of our community for a while, thank you for tuning in today. We all have dreams and we have obstacles in our lives. And my hope for you is that you overcome your obstacles while you're pursuing your dreams. I have a great guest with me today, Stephanie Calahan. Stephanie Calahan is a business vision catalyst and life optimizer and is known for fast transformations that she creates with her clients. She worked with service-based entrepreneurs to help them boldly build a profitable, resentment-free, life-loving business of impact, meaning, and guilt-free freedom. After risking personal health and happiness as a high-achieving executive and jet-lagged consultant in corporate America, Stephanie vowed to not only create a life of real freedom for herself and her family, but also to teach fellow entrepreneurs how to do the same. She believes that life is meant to be lived, and that aligned mindset and fabulous vision combined with practical systems can make that happen very quickly. Her work with clients is a combination of inner mindset work and outer business strategy. She calls it working at the intersection of head and heart. Most of her clients are solopreneurs or owners of small businesses. Their life and work intertwine significantly. Often because of that, they're doing well in one aspect of their life. In other areas of their life, they're suffering. Unlike many other professionals that work with business owners, she doesn't try to fit her clients into a box or a preset program. Instead, programs are created to honor what each client brings to the table and fill their gaps as necessary. With her unique combination of right-brained and left-brained thinking, intuitive insight, passion, results-based coaching, powerful questioning, and strategic systematizing magic, in record time, her clients dance with joy as their vision becomes reality in their business and life. She can help you create a wildly profitable, life-loving business of service, meaning, and guilt-free freedom too. She loves her roles as a dedicated wife, energetic and involved mom, community volunteer, sought-after transformational speaker, mentor, producer, and trainer. She lives in Illinois, USA, with her husband, son, and a very rambunctious dog. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you, Warren, so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to the topic we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, I am looking forward to our conversation as well. As you might know, on How to Become an Obstacle Buster podcast, we provide different strategies, tips, and resources for sales professionals and entrepreneurs to overcome their obstacles to achieve success. So really to start that conversation today, as the business vision catalyst and founder of Calahan Solutions, tell us about your business.
Thank you for asking. I work with smart, energetic entrepreneurs who are purpose-driven and have a desire to do big things in the world, or they have a message that they want to share. And their number one problem is that they're working harder than they'd like to. They're at a point in their business where they're moving quickly, but they'd like to experience more growth without being in all of the details and getting caught up in bottlenecks. And they have lots of ideas, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge or the consistent systems to get them to their goal. So often they've experienced results in their business, but they now find themselves in this really painful place because the success that they've created has come back to hurt them. They're spending way more time in their business than they want to, and they're doing things that they may not want to do in the name of success. And they find that they've lost the freedom that they were seeking when they became an entrepreneur. And the saddest thing is that when they get sucked up into working this way, Like it's kind of like the hamster on the hamster wheel. They're going and going, but not really getting anywhere. They often find that they're lacking in other areas of their life too. So, for example, sometimes their relationships suffer, or their health starts suffering, or they may have feelings of guilt because they're not spending time with their family or doing the activities that they want to do in a way that they want to do them. My clients are typically the ones that are pedaling the hardest, but they're not getting the traction that they need and want that will lead them to the freedom that they ultimately desire. So, what I do is mentor and optimize. I'm on a mission now to teach as many entrepreneurs as I can to recognize where they are and be okay with that, but then put systems in their life so that they don't have to experience the pain of success, but that they can experience real freedom in their life. And we work at what I call the head and heart of performance optimization. Mindset plus aligned strategy plus their skills equal a performance optimized business. We quickly de stress their business, leverage every ounce of their brilliance, and systematize their success so that they can work less, impact more people, and enjoy real freedom in their business and life. All the money they want, all the time they want, and all the joy they want in the service of others.
Wow, that's awesome, Stephanie. So when you're working with your clients, I'm sure over the years there might be kind of a pattern that you see. What's the greatest obstacle that your clients encounter?
My clients hire me to help them with a number of surface level challenges. And I say surface level because they may identify one reason that they want help, and then we have these underlying things that are actually working on. So typically, they all have an underlying root of visibility blocks or money blocks. Essentially, every one of us have blocks that keep us from moving our business or even our life, the goals that we have forward. And I see that in new business owners as well as my multi-million dollar business owners. And the trick is to be able to recognize those blocks and then heal the old wounds and develop ways to work past them.
Well, excellent. So you mentioned success blocks and money blocks and visibility blocks. Now, I've definitely heard money blocks before, but I'm not familiar with visibility blocks. Can you share quickly what each of those things are?
Sure. A money block is anything that blocks you around earning, attracting, receiving, having, keeping hold of, saving, managing, and leveraging the money in your life. So they're deep. They're often subconscious beliefs about money that we were taught or we picked up as we were growing up. Now, I've worked with people who grew up with a tremendous amount of money and they're still getting financial support from the family because when they start their own business, and I especially see this a lot in women, they don't make money. Their underlying reason is often that they feel that they're not good enough to make money because they never had to struggle financially in their growing up years. On the flip side of that, I've also worked with people who came from a conservative or Midwestern background who were taught that they had to work really hard, I mean, really hard to make money so that they almost make sure that they burn out and they overwhelm before they even reach their first 150. And that was actually a money block I had to work through was that whole I have to work really hard in order to make money. And then a visibility block is simply a belief that you knowingly or unknowingly have going on in your subconscious that's limiting your ability to get more visible. It's also a subtle money block because the less visible you are in your business, the less people can find you and invest in your products and services.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, what are the common blocks that you see, and how would someone know if they're experiencing one of those blocks?
They can be directly linked to money, such as you're blocked around being able to earn more than a certain income level. So, for example, you can't, whatever you do, earn more than $25,000 a year. Now, that number is arbitrary, of course.
Mhm.
It could just as easily be 250,000 or 2 million. And they can also be indirectly linked to money or visibility, such as you don't have the confidence to step up in a way you need to contact that client, a colleague, or an industry leader with an offer, a product, or a service or a proposal that you know will help you supercharge your money goals. And they can also be really subtle too. So, a few common blocks, and get ready, I'm going to go really fast with this list,
Okay.
is just to see if you recognize any of these in you. And these are just some examples. So, not making the ask or call to action or offer, fear of failure, fear of success, money issues of not having enough or just money drama, that you're camera shy, you procrastinate, you have perfectionism, nothing's ever good enough, overwhelmed with how to start, imposter syndrome, that I'm not good enough. This has already been done concerns rolling through your head. Miscellaneous distractions that all of a sudden start popping up when you're working on a project. Holding on to control, nobody can do it better than me. I just don't have time to focus on that. I can't trust anyone. I'm the only one that can do that just right. Maybe foggy thinking, having challenges focusing, guilt that you will do more than someone you admire, which is a really interesting one. Desire to lose weight first. I'm going to lose 15 pounds before I start that YouTube channel that I said I was going to do. Worry, what if no one's interested? What if I do all this work and no one will buy? Overwhelmed with technology, feeling not good enough, over giving or over delivering at your expense financially or at the expense of your health and time and so on. And so that's actually the short list. But I'm sure that the people that are listening to this will have one or two of those that may feel a little familiar.
Well, that's really an interesting list, Stephanie. And obviously, there's definitely a few that popped out for myself. I know when you mentioned control, it was like, that's not really, couldn't be a block of some sort. So, how would someone know that they're experiencing one of those blocks?
Well, the interesting thing is, often you don't know you have these blocks. So many of my clients have amazingly fabulous success, but they've reached some kind of plateau where they can't seem to advance it further. And it helps to have someone that can help you dig deeper to identify what's really going on. And so that's part of what we do in the programs that I work with my clients on. We identify it and then we figure out how to remove it. And other times, a block happens when we don't completely embrace our own brilliance. Others can see how awesome we are, but we don't see it ourselves. Once you eliminate the blocks and get good systems in place, your message can get out at amazing rates. And each type of block has its own solutions. But the first step is understanding that you have a block. So there are sometimes these blocks are also sometimes called limiting beliefs. So you might hear people talking about that. They're the same thing, really. And so one thing that you can do to identify your blocks is allow yourself to dream. So I'm going to ask you three different questions. And you can write down the answers. We don't necessarily have to talk about them. The people listening in can write down their answers as well and help identify some. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So the three questions. If all your business dreams had come true, what would you have achieved? And just whatever the first thing in your mind is, write it down. The second question is, what would you do in your business if you knew you couldn't fail? And the third question, if there was nothing standing in your way, what would be your ultimate business goal? Now, what frequently happens when people, and I know we're doing this really fast for the purpose of this show,
Sure.
but what frequently comes up when people start answering these questions and they really give themselves the time and the space to dream and answer that question, as wildly as they want to, resistance will frequently come up in answering those questions. That what I call that little gremlin voice
Mhm.
sitting inside your head that might say, "But you might fail. But there are things in my way. But." Anytime you hear that, those little gremlins in your head, those voices in your mind arguing with you about what is or isn't possible that appear, those always appear when you have blocks. So that's one good way that you can self-identify some of the blocks that you have going on. And you can acknowledge them and say, "Yeah, hi, hello, good to see you. Thanks for, showing up so that I can do something about it." And you bring them into the open. The arguments, the barriers, the reoccurring Debbie Downers that you have going on in your own mind that get in your way when you're imagining business success beyond your wildest dreams, write them all down. And then once they're all written down, you can start working on busting through the barriers. And so there's one last question that I'll share as well, just in helping you identify what some of those blocks might be. And this is one of my favorite questions. What is the one thing that you are avoiding doing right now that you know if you did it would move your business or life forward? And I'll repeat that one more time. What is the one thing that you're avoiding doing right now that you know that if you did it would move your business or life forward? Whatever you answer in that question is the first block that you have an opportunity to remove because you've said it's going to move your business forward, right? So it's a really good one that you can start with.
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly, as that knowledge surfaces, or the clients uh, bring to mind in reference to what they need to address, when they have that resistance, how do you help your client then to change that limiting belief so they can release that limiting belief?
So there's a lot of different techniques for limiting belief elimination, and there's not one particular technique that I would say works for everybody. Um, there are journaling techniques, there are verbal conversation techniques, there are techniques that I call meeting of the mind, which is a little wacky, and that's where you get in a quiet space, you get where you're really super comfortable, and a lot of people close their eyes, but you don't have to. And you envision a boardroom, a comfortable space where a group can meet. So if a boardroom is intimidating for you, pick something else, but a space that's really comfortable and open and accessible where people can meet. And you invite the different parts of you to come to that meeting. And you ask this question of, whatever the block is. So let's say that you brought up something with the last question that I just asked about, what are you avoiding doing right now? And you ask that group, that committee of your mind, you know, what's going on that we're resisting this? Does anyone want to speak up? And it's really amazing that when you take this exercise seriously, there are different thoughts that'll start coming into your head. Some clients have even told me they've named the different parts of themselves so that they can more fully identify what parts of themselves are struggling with other parts of themselves. Now, I'm not talking about multiple personality
Mm-hmm.
here. It's like, so for example, three of the roles that I have in my life are to be a dedicated wife, an active, energetic mom, and a business owner. And sometimes that personal side and that business side can kind of argue with each other if there's conflicting values. And so by having those committee meetings of the mind, you can start identifying where those conflicts are. And when you identify the conflicts, then you can start problem solving. Sometimes the conflicts are really nonsensical because our subconscious is more like talking to a 3-year-old, even if you're
Mm-hmm.
much older than that. And so you can acknowledge the nonsensicalness of it and then start unpacking it. What parts of me are fighting or struggling? So, for example, a long time ago when my son was really little, I used to be really, really good at sales. And all of a sudden I hit this point where I was just bombing. Like I wasn't selling anything. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And ultimately, what happened was that my son had shifted into a different phase of life. And my subconscious was saying, my value of being a really good mom, if I sell more of the programs that I had designed, I wouldn't have the time capacity to be the really good mom that I wanted to be. So I was self sabotaging those sales conversations. Once I was able to figure that out, I was able to look closer at the programs that I was designing and figure out how can I deliver programs where I am giving really amazing service to my clients because that's a business value that I have, that's a personal value that I have, while still being fully available for my son when he needed me. And I made some tweaks to my program, and it's amazing, but things started selling much faster after that because then the internal parts of me weren't conflicted with each other.
Very interesting. So you told me that there's some really simple things that you can do, and often you can do them before the sales conversation to position themselves in a position where setting themselves up for success. Can you share some of those strategies with us?
Oh, I'd love to. So I have four in particular that are top of mind. So the first tip is to decide who you're going to be to support your prospective client. And when I say that, I write B with 2 capital letters, BE. Now, that just sounds really generic, and I realize that. So, what does it mean to be? They're really different states of being that we hold ourselves in when we have any kind of interaction with somebody. So, for the people that typically don't like sales, they're scared, frustrated, nervous, anxious, and all those different states of being that they may be holding themselves in when they're having a sales conversation. The Those aren't really empowering states of being to be in, and the people that we're talking to need us to be powerful, right? They've got a problem they want to be solved, or they want to have solved, and so they need us to be carrying ourselves in a way that's going to empower them to do what they need to do. So, one really simple thing that you can do right now today is sit down and decide, when you're talking with your prospects, where are they mentally and how are they feeling? And how do you need to show up in the conversation in order for them to have a positive experience? So, some that clients have come up with before are you loving? Are you happy? Are you energetic? Are you powerful? Are you enthusiastic? Pick whatever states of being work really well for you, that resonate with you, and then consider taking a sticky note and posting those words by your phone or your computer whenever you have those conversations, to remind yourself to shift into that frame of reference. Now, that sounds simple, but it makes a really huge difference in how you carry yourself, the words that you use, and even how you think about going into the conversation. So that's tip number 1, is just really think about how you're going to shift how you carry yourself into the conversation. And what I encourage people to do, if this is a new concept for them, is to practice it. Maybe practice it outside of a sales conversation. Maybe you have a significant other that there's a certain topic that always triggers something not so positive. Think about that and practice. How can I be different in this conversation where it would result in a different outcome? Or there's a lot of different ways that you can respond to that. But that's the tip number 1. The second tip that you can use to shift your mindset is to shift your wording and your mindset from pricing to investment, and then stop spending your prospects' money. So let's talk about what that means. A lot of people that I talk to say, my pricing is this. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that especially if you're a service industry, but even if you have products, to sell on pricing is something you do with a commodity. So, for example, the farmers that are growing corn and beans here in Illinois, they have a certain amount that they grow, and it's a commodity. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's used up, and there's a price that goes up and down on the commodities market. But that's not what happens when they work with you. When your prospects and your clients work with you, they're making an investment, because what you're doing with them, whether you have a service that you're delivering for them, or whether you have a product that's creating some form of transformation, they are transforming as a process of interacting with you. And that is an investment, because that's something that's going to continue going for them even when you're no longer around. So start shifting your phrasing to investment, because it actually makes a difference in how you have your conversations. Now, the second part to that tip was to stop spending your prospects' money. And I can't tell you the number of people that I talk to when I'm helping them with their sales, when they're trying to figure out their pricing, or when they're getting ready to have a conversation with a prospect, that will say, well, I'm not really sure they have the money to work with me. You don't know that. You really don't know. You know that they say don't judge a book by the cover. So even if somebody says they don't have money, they may have it, and they're willing to free it up once they find out what your program is going to do for them. I've had clients identify funds from the most amazing places. And if I had gone into the conversation saying, well, they probably won't work with me anyway, already I'm in this negative space thinking that I'm not working with this person. I've decided they're going to say no before I've ever made an offer. And that's kind of crazy, right? So that would impact how I have my conversations. That would impact my mindset going into it. So it's so much better to stop spending your prospects' money for them. Don't assume anything about what they do or what they don't have, and just serve. Identify the best way that you're going to be able to help them, and then help them see the transformation that they're going to get, and let them decide if they really have the money or not. They need to decide what they're spending their money on, not you. And here's the thing, people spend money on all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's people that will go and spend up to $1,000 and more on the latest smartphone every time a new one comes out. They find a way to come up with that money where they may be doing something for themselves and they don't say that they have money. So, really, it's not a literal I do or I don't have money. What you're really doing is talking to them about their priorities and where they're going to put their dollar investment. And that's the other reason I say investment. The other piece to that kind is kind of a side trick to this is that to understand sometimes people really want to do your program, and whatever your investment around that you quote them. So for example, I have 5-figure programs that I sell and I work with clients on, and they'll say, "Oh, that's a deal for what I'm getting." But then they run into cash flow challenges. So sometimes it's not so much about deciding whether they want to do it or not, or even whether it's worth, quote unquote, the money to them. It's how do I make it happen? So when you stop spending your prospects' money and you start actually partnering with them to say, okay, we've decided this is a really great program for you. We've decided that it's an investment you want to make, but cash flow is a challenge. So how can we make that happen? Then you end up getting really creative over funding options. You get creative over pricing plans, and there's a lot of different ways that you can work with people. But just because somebody says, I don't have the money, let them really hear how you're going to serve them. Don't make assumptions for them. And then the third tip is when you're having conversations with your prospect, I want you to totally shift away from thinking about the next thing that you're going to say, and instead practice active listening. Because what typically happens is while your prospect is talking to you, you're thinking, okay, this is the next thing I'm going to say. And then this is the next thing I'm going to tell them about this program. And then I'm going to, and then I'm going to, and so on, right? So know this. Talking with your prospects is not about what you know or even who you are. I work with these really amazing experts that constantly want to turn their sales conversations into what they can do for the prospect or share their resume, and they make it about them. But it's supposed to be about the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the conversation. Often when they are talking to their prospective client, they have these 3 things on their mind. Getting the sale, so, oh boy, I could really use the money. Or let me prove that I'm worth it. Especially for people that have the inferiority complex or the I'm not good enough thoughts, mindsets, they'll frequently shift their sales conversation into I need to prove my worth. Let me show everything I know to this person on one call. And then, or the third thing they might be thinking of is I've spent loads on training and certification and they need to know that investment. And so on, right? But when someone calls you to discuss services, they've already begun identifying what's important to them, and they've looked at your website, they've looked at your social media, they already know something about you. So until you listen, you don't know what they're about, and you're not really hearing what they're telling you. And people really want to be understood, so seek first to understand. They're going to choose to work with people that understand their problem and they believe can help solve their problem. So what that means is you're not thinking about the next thing you're going to say, you're actually paying attention to what's being said to you and then repeating it back to them, so that when you're talking with your prospect, you can practice active listening. Okay, so what I heard you say was, and then paraphrase what you think you just heard, and then confirm, did I get that right? Because that's confirming back. It's also on a subconscious level, letting your prospect know that you're really paying attention. And in an attention starved world, that's worth gold. So it does 2 positive things for you, and it's really simple to do. So if you haven't heard of active listening before, just Google active listening and you'll find all kinds of great exercises. By talking less and listening more, you gain really important information, and so does your prospect. And then the fourth do before tip is to do what I call mirror, mirror on the wall. Often, people will get into a sales conversation and they'll be really engaged in practicing active listening, like I talked about, and they're talking about investment and they're really focusing on the prospective client. And then they get to the part where they have to say the dollars and they stumble because all of a sudden, ugh. Yeah, I've heard clients say, I was doing really good and until I had to tell them what the investment was, and they falter. So, what I'd like to suggest is that it could just be because you don't have enough practice saying the numbers. So, what you can do is take your highest level investment amount that you offer, whatever that is. Let's say it's $1 million for the purpose of this example, and go in front of a mirror and just practice sharing your investment for whatever the program is, $1 million. And then they pay attention to your facial expressions. So you would go in and you'd say, the investment for program X is $1 million. And then you stop and you do some introspection. What was your facial expression? Did my pay, when I said these things, did my voice dip? Did I make a funny facial expression? If there's something going on inside your subconscious about your actual pricing, it'll come out in your verbal tones and it'll come out in your body language. And if you don't practice it and identify it ahead of time, what happens is your prospect can hear that and see that, even if they're not exactly sure what they're hearing and seeing, but they know that there's something like, oh, something's just not right here. They know it on a subconscious level. So if you practice speaking your investment amounts in the mirror, you can see where you have opportunities to work. And it's practice so that when you actually get on the phone or in your face to face conversations, when you're having those conversations, it's something that you just naturally are able to communicate.
Those are excellent tips, Stephanie. So I think you said that
Thank
there are
you.
4 or 5 questions that prospects ask before hiring an advisor, and understanding them can help them with the sales process go much easier. What are those questions?
Right. So there's always 4, sometimes 5 decisions that anyone makes when they're making an investment decision on advisors. So the first one is, do I think that this person, coach, mentor, accountant, hairstylist, lawyer, what have you, can help me? So do they that first question is around the skill set that the expert has, and does the prospect believe with what they know so far that that person can help them? The second question is this program what I need? So there's a lot of really brilliant people out there that are selling similar things. And so the prospect needs to answer, is this the program that's right for me? The third question is, will I do the work? Especially if you're in some kind of transformative business or in a business where your prospect is going to have some kind of input, whether you're a personal trainer and that person's going to have to do stretches at home or come, once a week or 3 times a week or whatever your frequency is, or if you're a business coach and there's exercises they need to do. There's all different ways that clients need to interact with their service providers in order for the good result to happen. And this question of, will I do the work, is one that prospects have to ask themselves. And it's often one that people that are doing the sales completely forget about because they're so focused on themselves. It's back again, it's about the prospect, not about you. But frequently the mistake that people make is they're so focused on themselves that they're thinking that it's about their program or it's about their pricing, when sometimes it's just really about the self-confidence that your prospect has in themselves. The fourth question is, how will I come up with the money to invest in this? So sometimes people could think that the program that you're offering, the product or the program that you're offering, is absolutely worth the dollar amount that you are asking, but they have a cash flow challenge. So they have to figure out, how do I get these funds? And then sometimes the fifth question that comes up sometimes, but not always, is, will X person be okay with me making the investment? So, for example, it might be that there is a husband and wife pair that make financial decisions together, but you're only talking to one of the two of them. And so then they have to decide in that conversation, will that other person be okay if I say yes to this? So, though, if you have all five of those questions accounted for in your sales process, that you can make sure that all those questions get addressed, you're actually going to be more relaxed in your sales conversations and you're going to have a higher success rate. So, for example, at one time, I kind of melded all this together in my sales conversations. And if I got a no, I didn't know why. And it was this big question. Well, is it me? Is it my product? Maybe my pricing was high. Maybe my pricing was low. But if you structure your sales conversation in a way where you get really clear confirmation of each step, then you know what element you have to address with that particular person. And sometimes the answer is truly no, it's just not a good fit. But other times, in breaking down those questions, you have an opportunity, one, to build a deeper relationship with your prospect and helping them figure out how to work through those things. And two, a much greater opportunity for a sale.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for sharing that insight, Stephanie, because I think that strategy alone, if our listeners would sit down and spend some time writing that out and understanding, kind of embracing those four questions, that will impact the results in their sales process.
It absolutely will. And I'll tell you, I actually, at the beginning of my actual sales conversation, I get super transparent and I tell my prospects, okay, when people are hiring an advisor, here are the 5 decisions they need to make. And that's what that's what our conversation is going to be about. And I'm not going to hold anything personally, and we're going to decide at the end whether this is a good fit for you and whether this is a good fit for me. And what's really interesting about me being really super transparent about that is that the prospect relaxes too, because they want me to be successful. And that's another thing to realize is that your prospects are coming to you because they've got a problem and they're hoping that you'll be able to solve it. So they want you to be successful once you've gotten into the point of having that sales conversation.
Wow, that's excellent. So what does the future hold for you, Stephanie? Are you working in any special projects?
Oh, thank you for asking that. You know, I love my work with private clients. So I fill a lot of my time with that. But as a part of my Mindset, Money, and Magnetism program, I've created what I lovingly call the Income Accelerator Calculator. And it's actually an automated tool, and it's a part of a private one on one program. And what I'm doing right now is figuring out how I can turn that tool into a standalone product for people. Maybe there's people that want that element as a DIY element. And so I'm working on figuring out how I can make that happen.
Wow, that's fascinating. That seems like a great tool for your clients to be able to connect.
Well, and it's fun. Most of my clients I mentioned earlier are freedompreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
so they want to make really good money, but they also want to have a life. And this particular calculator includes the dollars and cents of it. What do you really need to make? How will you make it? But it also includes the element of, is this going to be fun? How much effort is this going to take? Because if you're building out a business where you have to work 24/7, then that's probably not, and you are a freedompreneur, then that's probably not a good business model for you. It'd be a good business model for somebody that wants to work 24/7, but not for somebody that's a freedompreneur. And so this tool helps you look at those different elements and map out what you're going to deliver in a way that's going to give you the type of business and life that you really want.
Wow, that sounds like really an exciting tool. So
Thank
if
you.
our clients wanted to connect with you, Stephanie, what's the best way for them to be able to reach out?
The best way is just to start at my website, stephaniecalahan.com. All of my contact information and social media links, they're all right there for you to choose from. Pick the method that works the best for you. I'm all over the web. It's me. I don't pay an administrative assistant for my voice. If you're talking, it is with me. And the Calahan is spelled with one L. So it's Stephanie Calahan, and Calahan is CALAHAN.com.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that is also listed in the show notes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you sharing your strategies. Great value that you definitely added with our listeners today, and helping them to break through their obstacles to be able to achieve success.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, until next time, this is your host, Warren Wandling, saying, make it a great day.